What if the bridge was already built, already paid for, already connected, and the only thing delaying its opening was the leverage being extracted from it? What if the country that financed the entire project, with its own taxpayers' money, ended up giving up future profits to a partner that contributed nothing to construction? And what if a privately owned, politically connected bridge, one that had fought this new crossing for years, stood to benefit from every single month of delay? Donald Trump just made a bold claim about a massive Canadian bridge. He says he beat Canada and won a much better deal. But the fine print buried inside that deal tells another story. The Gordie Howe International Bridge connects Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario. Canada financed the entire $4.70 billion project alone. Construction began back in 2018, funded completely by Canadian taxpayers. The United States never contributed a single dollar toward building costs. Yet Trump threatened to block the bridge from opening this year. He demanded compensation and fairness before allowing traffic to cross over. In February, Trump even suggested America deserved half ownership of it. Under the original agreement, Canada kept 100% of tolls that continued until Canada fully recovered its $4.70 billion. Only after that recovery would profits finally be split evenly between countries. Trump called that original arrangement completely unacceptable and demanded urgent renegotiation. So negotiations began, delaying the bridge opening that Michigan residents desperately wanted. In June, officials postponed the ribbon-cutting to resolve remaining outstanding issues. Weeks later, Trump announced he had secured a much better deal. He praised the Canadian government and celebrated the bridge finally opening. The bridge is now scheduled to officially open on July 31. On the surface, this sounded like a genuine victory for America. Then the actual details of the new agreement started leaking out. Here is the number that stunned people watching this deal closely. For the next 15 years, Canada keeps only 50% of profits. The other 50% goes into a regional economic development fund. Remember, Canada alone paid the entire $4.70 billion. Under the old deal, Canada would eventually recover every dollar spent. Under the new deal, that full recovery is no longer guaranteed. Half of future profits now flow into a fund with unclear rules. Nobody has clearly explained who actually controls or manages that fund. This is the fine print stunning people across Washington and Ottawa alike. A Canadian journalist first surfaced these specific terms directly from officials. The Wall Street Journal later confirmed the 50-50 profit split. Fox Business reported the same details, citing a senior Canadian official. Now let us talk about who actually benefits most from this new arrangement. There is another bridge nearby, called the Ambassador Bridge in Detroit. The Ambassador Bridge is privately owned by the wealthy Moreau family. For years, that family opposed the Gordie Howe Bridge project entirely anew. Competing bridge threatens their existing traffic and toll revenue. Reports indicate this family has donated money to the Trump administration. They also previously supported the former United States ambassador to Canada. Delays to the Gordie Howe opening happened to benefit their private bridge. Every extra month of delay meant more traffic crossing their toll booths. This connection raises serious questions about who this new deal serves. Meanwhile, Michigan officials were celebrating for completely different, practical reasons entirely. Governor Gretchen Whitmer praised the bridge without even mentioning Trump directly. She said thousands of Michigan workers physically built this critical crossing. She emphasized faster auto production, lower costs, and better paying jobs. Whitmer's silence on Trump speaks volumes about the political tension here. Let us look at the bigger economic picture behind this dispute. Trump's own raid representative publicly explained the administration's real reasoning here. Jameson Greer compared America's $29 trillion economy to Canada's. Canada's entire economy sits somewhere between $1 and $2 trillion. Greer argued America deserves a fair share simply because it is bigger. That logic has almost nothing to do with who actually built it. This tension fits into a much wider pattern between Washington and Ottawa. Just recently, Trump refused to automatically renew the North American Trade Pact. That agreement, known as USMCA, still remains technically active for now, but it now faces annual reviews instead of reviews every 6 years. That change alone creates constant uncertainty for businesses across both countries. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has openly acknowledged this shifting relationship. He said Canada's heavy economic reliance on America has become a weakness. Carney signaled Canada would now pursue new trade partners more aggressively. The bridge deal is really one small piece of a larger story. It shows how leverage, not fairness, now drives major cross-border negotiations. Let us also look at what everyday drivers will actually pay to cross. The Gordie Howe Bridge will become the fourth crossing linking these cities. It stretches roughly 1.5 miles across the Detroit River itself. A University of Windsor study estimated major savings for trucking companies overall. Researchers projected trucks would save $2.30 billion total. That savings is expected to accumulate gradually over a 30-year period. Faster crossing times also mean less congestion for everyday commuters nearby. So there are genuine, practical benefits buried inside this messy political fight. But the financial fine print still raises uncomfortable and unresolved questions. Who exactly controls that new Regional Economic Development Fund going forward? Will Canadian taxpayers ever fully recover their original $4.70 billion? Or does this new arrangement quietly extend that recovery timeline indefinitely instead? These are exactly the kinds of details politicians rarely explain clearly. Trump framed this deal as a clear, personal victory for America. But the numbers tell a far more complicated and nuanced story. Canada financed everything, built everything, and still gave up future profits. Meanwhile, a politically connected family may quietly benefit from ongoing arrangements. This is what savvy investors and analysts call reading beyond headlines. Headlines say winner and loser, but the fine print says nuance. And nuance is exactly where real financial risk usually hides quietly. This story also reveals something bigger about cross-border infrastructure deals. Generally, whoever holds more leverage often writes the terms everyone else follows. That is true for bridges, trade pacts, and entire national economies. There is still far more of this story worth carefully unpacking. Because what happens next with this fund changes everything you understood. Let us dig deeper into what this fund actually means for Canadian taxpayers. The Windsor-Detroit Bridge Authority described new terms as cooperative measures overall. Officials called it a series of measures focused on toll governance and transparency. That phrase transparency sounds reassuring but remains frustratingly vague in practice. No public document yet explains exactly how transparent this fund will be. Investors and taxpayers generally distrust financial structures without clear reporting requirements attached. A fund without published rules is essentially a promise, not a guarantee. This matters because 15 years is a very long financial commitment. 15 years of profit sharing could total hundreds of millions of dollars. Nobody has published projections showing exactly how large this fund could grow. Compare that to the University of Windsor's clear trucking savings estimate. Researchers confidently projected $2.30 billion in savings. That figure came with methodology, time frames, and a named academic institution behind it. The development fund has none of that supporting financial documentation yet. This asymmetry between clear savings and vague fund rules should concern anyone paying attention. Now, let us revisit exactly how this dispute escalated earlier this year. Back in February, Trump cited two very different complaints publicly online. First, he criticized Canada's refusal to stock certain American alcoholic beverages. Second, he referenced ongoing, separate trade tensions involving China and tariffs. He then made an unusual claim connecting the bridge to hockey itself. Trump suggested China might terminate ice hockey being played inside Canada. He even claimed China could eliminate the Stanley Cup entirely. Somehow, analysts covering the story called that particular claim extremely unlikely to happen. This detail matters because it shows how negotiations mixed unrelated grievances together. Bridge financing, alcohol sales, and hockey became tangled into one dispute. That tangling makes it harder for outside observers to evaluate fairness. Clearly, when issues blend together, leverage becomes murky, and accountability becomes difficult too. Windsor's Mayor Drew Dale-Kness offered a calmer perspective during the dispute. He noted the bridge was already fully constructed and fully connected. Both interstate systems on either side were ready for immediate traffic. His comment suggested the delay was purely political, not technical whatsoever. That distinction is financially important for anyone evaluating this entire situation. A technical delay suggests genuine problems needing resolution before safe opening. A political delay suggests leverage being extracted from an already finished asset. This situation increasingly resembled leverage, not any legitimate safety concern whatsoever. Let us talk about historical context. Because this bridge faced opposition before, the original idea for this crossing was first proposed decades ago. Opposition emerged as early as the early 2000s from various groups. The Ambassador Bridge owners fought this project for years using lawsuits. They understood a new public bridge could undercut their private toll revenue. Despite that opposition, construction eventually began back in 2018 anyway. Canada committed fully to financing since American funding never truly materialized. That long history makes recent developments feel like a familiar pattern repeating. Private interests near public infrastructure projects consistently seek favorable political outcomes. This time the mechanism was a presidential threat rather than a lawsuit. Now let us discuss what analysts believe happens next for this new fund. Since details remain unclear, expect further reporting to slowly surface. Eventually, financial journalists will likely file public records requests for fund governance documents. Canadian opposition politicians may demand parliamentary hearings on toll revenue sharing. American taxpayers notably contributed nothing yet still gained 50% leverage. That imbalance alone practically guarantees continued political scrutiny for years ahead. Consider also the broader diplomatic backdrop surrounding this entire negotiation process. Trump attended the NATO summit in Turkey just days before announcing this. Global alliances and bilateral disputes were clearly intersecting during the same period. Trade Representative Jameson Greer's economic size argument fits that broader diplomatic posture. Bigger economies increasingly demand renegotiated terms regardless of original financial contributions made. That approach extends well beyond just this one specific bridge project. Remember, Trump also recently declined to automatically renew the USMCA trade agreement. Annual reviews replaced the previously scheduled 6-year renewal cycle entirely. A single change increases uncertainty for countless businesses trading across this border. Manufacturers, especially automakers, rely heavily on predictable rules for cross-border shipping. Detroit and Windsor specifically share a deeply intertwined automotive manufacturing ecosystem. Parts frequently cross this exact border multiple times during vehicle assembly. Any toll or policy uncertainty directly raises costs throughout that entire supply chain. This is precisely why Governor Whitmer emphasized faster production and lower costs. Her statement focused on tangible economic benefits rather than political credit minus taking. She highlighted better minus paying jobs emerging from smooth across minus border trade efficiency. That framing intentionally avoided crediting Trump for the final negotiated outcome. Political observers noticed her statements careful, deliberate omission of his name entirely. Silence in politics often communicates just as much as direct criticism does. Prime Minister Mark Carney also offered his own broader economic assessment recently. He said Canada's economy had grown too dependent on the American market. He called that dependency a genuine weakness requiring urgent strategic correction. Carney signaled intentions to diversify trade relationships beyond just American markets. This bridge dispute likely reinforced that exact strategic thinking within Canada's government. When your biggest trading partner threatens infrastructure you already fully paid for, diversifying your economic relationships suddenly seems like simple financial common sense. So where does this leave everyday people watching from outside these negotiations? The bridge itself remains a genuinely impressive engineering and economic achievement overall. 6 lanes, cable minus stay design, spanning roughly 1.5 miles total. It will meaningfully speed up trade between two deeply connected economic regions. But the financial terms attached reveal something important about modern power dynamics. Being right, or even being the one who paid, matters less now. What matters more is leverage, timing, and political willingness to disrupt things. Canada built this bridge, funded this bridge, and still gave up profits. A single fact should reshape how you evaluate similar deals going forward. That leverage minus based thinking now reaches far beyond just this single bridge dispute. Other infrastructure projects along the northern border could face similar pressure eventually. Rail crossings and shared energy grids involve comparable financing imbalances too. If leverage works once, expect it to apply again in future negotiations. That is exactly why financial analysts are watching this specific precedent so closely. Precedent set here could shape negotiating strategy for years across multiple industries. Now let us break down the actual dollar mechanics one more time clearly. For $70 billion Canadian dollars built this entire bridge from scratch. Under the original plan, Canada recovers that money before splitting future profits. Under the new plan, 50% gets diverted starting almost immediately instead. The diversion happens regardless of whether Canada has recovered its investment yet. In simple terms, recovery could now take significantly longer than originally planned. Longer recovery timelines mean delayed returns on a massive taxpayer minus funded investment. Delayed returns effectively function like an interest minus free loan extended involuntarily to America. That is the financial reality hiding behind celebratory statements about fairness and cooperation. Let us also examine who actually benefits from that regional development fund itself. Officials have not named specific projects this fund will eventually finance. Without named projects, taxpayers cannot evaluate whether spending serves genuine public interest. Vague funds create opportunities for funds to serve narrower political interests instead. This is not unique to Canada. Vague, slush-style funds appear in many countries. But given this fund's origin, Additional scrutiny seems entirely appropriate and warranted. Financial transparency advocates will likely push hard for detailed, public reporting requirements. Expect calls for independent audits covering exactly how this fund gets spent. Until those audits happen, skepticism remains a financially reasonable default position here. Now let us zoom out and consider what this means for regular investors. Infrastructure deals like this rarely make daily financial news headlines directly, but they reveal patterns useful for evaluating public-private partnerships more broadly. Watch closely whenever announcements celebrate deals without disclosing complete financial terms. Celebratory language often signals something uncomfortable being deliberately downplayed or hidden. That pattern applies to corporate mergers, government contracts, and international agreements alike. Smart observers always ask one simple question before accepting any celebratory narrative: who actually pays? Who actually profits? And who controls the money afterward? In this bridge deal, Canada paid. America gained leverage, and control remains unclear. That imbalance alone justifies continued attention from journalists and everyday citizens alike. Let us also consider the timing of this announcement within domestic American politics. Trump announced this deal just before a highly visible bridge opening ceremony. Timing announcements before visible public events is a common political communication strategy. It allows credit minus claiming right as cameras capture a genuinely popular infrastructure milestone. Whitmer's celebratory statement notably focused entirely on